The gender confusion delusion. Let's get dialed in. Hello and welcome to the show that still makes sense. Now, here's a question. When did it become controversial to believe in basic biology? You know, the same biology that's been around since the dawn of time. Apparently, in 2025, saying men are men, women are women is considered more dangerous than juggling chainsaws at a preschool. And here's the crazy part. The people telling us that we're bigots for wanting a little sanity aren't just loud, they're organized. They've got hashtags, TikTok influencers, and of course, a few $1 billion in Big Pharma's back pocket. But what do they not have? Well, common sense. And as it turns out, a plan that actually helps kids struggling with gender distress. But tonight, we've got someone who does. Enter Pamela Garfield-Jaeger, a mental health professional who's not afraid to point out the obvious. For years, Pamela's been working with kids and families, and here's what she's discovered. Gender confusion isn't something you fix with a scalpel or a cocktail of hormones. It's something you address with care, empathy, and, wait for it, actual mental health support. How radical. Now, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, when did it become normal for kids to make life-altering decisions before they're old enough to drive? You can't vote at 12. You can't get a tattoo at 14. But somehow signing up for puberty blockers is a perfectly reasonable choice. You don't even need a permission slip. Folks, if this doesn't sound insane to you, I'm going to guess you're either not paying attention or you work at MSNBC. And here's where Pamela comes in. Her book, A Practical Response to Gender Distress, isn't just a guide. It's a lifeline. It's about giving parents the tools they need to help their kids through one of the toughest challenges they'll face without bowing to the cultural mob. So what's her secret? Why does this woman who has spent her entire career helping people suddenly find herself the target of activists who think social media likes are the same thing as morality? And more importantly, how do we push back against this madness and start putting kids' well-being first again? Pamela Garfield-Jaeger is here tonight to answer all of that and more. Trust me, folks, you're not going to want to miss this because it's conversations like this one that might just save the next generation from the worst ideas of ours. And joining us now to help slice through the propaganda is licensed clinical social worker Pamela Garfield-Jaeger. Pamela, welcome to Texas Talkin'.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. I want to talk tonight a little bit about the book that you've written. And if you could share with our viewers, what's the basic case that you make in this book?
Well, I wrote this book. It's called A Practical Response to Gender Distress. And it's a book really, it was originally written for parents to help them understand what is going on with their teenager if their teenager announces to the family that they are now transgender. To understand what is going on, what is behind this, what possibly influenced their child, and what are some ways they could talk to their child about this topic.
And what did you find?
Oh, so yeah, what did I find? What I found is I have this chapter, it's called Why Are the Kids Doing This? And really there are so many influences and there are so many underlying issues. So my philosophy is trans is not some inherent inborn quality. What it is a symptom of some other issue, whether it be that person struggling with mental health issues, someone who's autistic, who has struggled socially, someone who has trauma, trying to find a way to fix their pain or fit in with others. And then they find, usually online, this magic pill, this magic solution that if they're trans and if they go along with all of the trans treatments and all of the the lingo and the culture that they'll feel better. And usually they do for quite a while because it feels good. It's for people to say you're wonderful and you're brave and stunning to be trans. And then they learn also those that just have questions are their enemy now. So that becomes a rift in the family. So I talk all about all of this in the book, to help parents understand what is happening with their child.
So these pills that they typically find online, I'm assuming you're referring to hormone blockers or some kind of puberty blockers, or what exactly are these children being exposed to?
Well, you can get all this stuff on the internet, but what I was actually referring to is just the messaging, just the
Oh, okay.
ideas.
A proverbial pill then.
Yeah, did I say pill? I don't know. The message. I'm not sure what I said. But they're getting that message. But you can get pills online. There are agencies now that are set up to basically mail order these hormones. I don't know if you can get puberty blockers. So the really young ones, they can't get it. That's usually, unfortunately, a parent who believes that they're going to help their child by transing them. Usually the parent is the one that has the issues in that case. It gets complicated. But with the teenagers who are off doing it on their own, they can, depending on what state, they can go to Planned Parenthood if they're under 18. Um, Not in Texas, happily, but other states they can. Even kids in Texas, they're not safe because they can, yes, order things online, or there are these sanctuary states. So California, the state that I recently escaped from, they have this law where they're a sanctuary state. So children, youth, I believe it's 12 and up, can go to California and become a ward of the state and go get hormones and surgeries under the on taxpayer dollars.
You brought up a minute ago what I thought was a very important point, and that is the prevalence of comorbidity. And for our viewers who don't know what that is, in other words, these gender confused teens, how often is the gender dysphoria coexisting with another psychiatric or psychological disorder? What would you estimate as the percentage? Or maybe you know the exact percentage.
I mean, I haven't done a study myself, but if I had to make a guess, I would say 100%. Every single one. And if you look even in the pro-trans websites, they also say that that's how they have so much leverage, because these are kids that do have a lot of mental health issues. So a lot of the parents are scared because these are kids that have had a suicide attempt in the past, or have some mental instability, or they're coming from a broken family or from trauma, so that they are struggling mentally for real, right? They're not just pretending on TikTok, which I think a lot of people dismiss mental health issues. They're really struggling. So here we have this vulnerable population, and then they're groomed online usually, and then reinforced in school or in the therapy practice, because therapists are trained to affirm. I'm an outlier in this. All these other adults, coaches, teachers, they all affirm. And so then it's reinforced. But it starts out with a vulnerable child who's struggling with something and wants to fix the pain or the discomfort, or wants to fit in, or is struggling at home, neglected at home, emotionally, excuse me, all kinds of issues like that.
Now, and this affirmation, right? When therapists basically say, if you're a man who thinks you're a woman, let's affirm that, let's reinforce that idea, what I would call a delusion. It's sort of insane to me because it's compartmentalized. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, that if somebody went in to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist to be treated for schizophrenia, or even, in rare cases, multiple personality disorder, which I think it's called dissociative identity disorder now, that therapist, that psychologist or psychiatrist would not say, well, let's indulge these schizophrenic delusions, these auditory hallucinations, or these visual hallucinations. They would treat the disorder, right?
Right. And the way they get around that, the activists or the people who really believe in this ideology and really a religious belief, they wouldn't see it as a disorder. So you and I see this as a problem. Anybody with common sense would see it's a problem when you need hormones and surgeries to fix something that makes you so uncomfortable that you want to kill yourself, right? That's a problem. However, they don't want to see it that way. So they don't compare it. So that's why that argument that most of us with common sense make doesn't land with people who are ideologically captured. And
So
yeah,
go ahead.
so that's how they see it. They If you look into queer theory is really about turning everything normal abnormal. So that's the
Up is
goal.
down and down is up and right is left, and
Exactly.
and it's complete chaos.
Yeah, and I've been to some trainings where they even so there's the DSM, which is the manual that psychologists use to look up diagnosis. So gender dysphoria is in there. It used to be called gender identity disorder, but they
Yep.
changed that because that's too stigmatizing. They don't like the word disorder. And that's really when the can of worms opened. So that was 2014. So they want it both ways. They want to have it in the DSM so that insurance will cover it, but they don't want it to be considered a disorder.
And there's the rub. There's the
Hmm.
rub. So I want to drill down a little bit further because it's sort of the foundation of this. At root, what do you believe, Pamela, is the genesis for today's gender confusion?
At root. Well, I mean, I think this is a symptom of, the emptiness within our culture. And I think it's people searching for something, searching for
For
meaning,
purpose,
searching for
right? Meaning,
belonging,
yeah.
searching for connection. I people when I speak about this issue, I don't really criticize the transgender people because I see them as victims too. I see them as victims of an ideology, and it comes from usually some kind of pain or emptiness. Perhaps they would do better with a church, something that gives them purpose and meaning and connection. It's a lot of people with attachment issues. That's why foster kids are so easily manipulated to believe they're trans. So that's what it is. It's our culture fracturing, the breakdown of families, all of that. So I think it's a symptom of our culture struggling.
Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Pamela why the cultural left seems to celebrate and promote this gender ideology. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. Folks, are you tired of big corporations controlling what you buy? Switch to a true American company making safer, healthier products right here in the USA. With over 450 high quality products that we use and run out of every day, all made with American pride. Enjoy 100% USDA prime and high choice pasture raised beef. No hormones, no antibiotics, just pure, delicious flavor. Support American jobs with a company that shares your values. Join over 2 million Patriot families that have already made the switch at switch2usamade.store. Don't wait. Join the movement today. That's switch2usamade.store. And we're back. Pamela, I wanted to ask you what I think is a very important question, and that is, why do you think this gender confusion or this gender ideology, maybe even, is being celebrated and promoted to the extent that it is by the cultural left?
Well, I think there are different types of people who are celebrating it. I believe there are some people who are quite nefarious and they know that this is evil. They're profiting off this, they're getting power out of this. I believe the people in the Biden administration, like Admiral Rachel Levine, who convinced WPATH to lower the standards and the age of consent for children to get transgender surgeries. I don't believe Rachel Levine is just doing this out of kindness. I think there's a power behind it. However, in general, I think most people don't realize. I think they've been bamboozled. I think they've been manipulated. I think that their empathy has been hijacked and weaponized to believe that this is the kind thing to do. And then there's a lot of the population that just is uncomfortable with it and doesn't know what to do or doesn't know what to say. So they just bow out of the conversation and just say, oh, you do you, right? Kind of a libertarian mentality. And so, unfortunately, people have gotten hurt in the process and they don't realize what's going on. They don't realize how harmful it is.
And that you do you mentality, is what has led to, dare I say, some people showing up to school and wanting to use a litter box in the men's or women's restrooms. So I agree with you. I think we need to be more in tune with what's going on here, and perhaps more importantly, how do we solve the problem? And I think that your book adequately addresses that. If someone were to come in and tell you today, hey, I'm struggling with this gender identity. I'm a boy who believes I'm a girl. How would you approach that? What would you say to them? How might it look?
Well, I honestly, if I were there, it depends on what role I have with that person, right? It depends on how close I am. Uh, as their therapist, I wouldn't confront it right away, meaning I would never affirm, I would never say, yes, you're a boy.